Let's talk about the latest then with Oliver Farry from our International Affairs Desk. Oliver, there's a lot of extensions going on at the moment. Donald Trump repeatedly extending his deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. Even his threat on Sunday extended it by yet another day. Why is he doing this?
Well, more or less to buy himself time. Donald Trump is improvising for want really of any substantial support. He's making things up as he goes along. He's frustrated in not getting the support for the war among his allies, except, of course, from Israel. European allies have, in particular, declined to support the war and outwardly said that it is illegal. Also, his administration and the Republican-dominated Congress around him is basically made up of sycophants and yes men and yes women as well, you could say, that there's nobody really willing to talk him down or rein him in. Now, usually in situations like this, you have a fairly rigid message discipline all the way down through a hierarchy. But in this case, unusually, the message discipline is completely lost at the very, very top. And nobody is actually taking him aside and saying, well, this is, in the words of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, is the rantings of a madman. And that's what Chuck Schumer said, not me. But there's the only Republican who seems to be actually going against the grain is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has also said that Trump's comments are madness, and she has called on her Republican colleagues to intervene. Significantly, she is no longer in the inner realms of MAGA, having broken with us last year over the earlier war in which the US joined in the bombing in Iran. So she's very much isolated on this. Instead, Trump is reveling in threats to commit war crimes in Iran, as Edward Wong of the New York Times says. Now, Trump's infamous Truth social media post on Sunday suggested that the US would bomb power plants and bridges. That would be attacks on civilian infrastructure. They would constitute war crimes. Now, whether the US will go through this is unsure. There's definitely a real danger of escalation, but once again, I wouldn't bet against Trump backing down yet again on Tuesday just to buy himself even more time.
Let's widen it out a little bit, Oliver. I mean, both sides throughout this, and particularly recently, have been claiming that they've got the upper hand in this war. Which one of them is right?
Well, I think probably both of them have something to crow about, particularly from that two-day drama of the two US warplanes being shot down by Iran over the weekend and the subsequent US rescue of a missing airman. Now, the ability of Iran to take down the planes suggests that they have got, that their air defences are not actually as depleted or degraded as was previously thought. That means in turn that an end to the war is probably not around the corner. The US, on the other hand, did manage to rescue its airman within Iranian territory, and it was a fairly big undertaking involving about 200 special forces, incurring no casualties, and Donald Trump has made hay with that himself. So each has something to boast about, but the reality is that the conflict is a stalemate. The US and Israel, they're continuing to inflict a lot of pain on Iran through its airstrikes, but Iran is able to absorb this, or at least the Iranian state is able to absorb it. Whether the civilian population are actually weathering it very well is another matter entirely. But still, Iran is able to riposte through attacks on both Israel and its Gulf allies. So it also holds the ultimate leverage, which is the Strait of Hormuz, and that continues to be under more or less lockdown at Tehran's whim, and this has sent fuel prices soaring across the world. That is a massive choke point internationally. Neither side is going to win this war ultimately, but it's likely that Iran is the one that's closer to achieving its objective, which is a fairly limited one, but still significant in the wider scheme of things.
Let's talk finally, Oliver, about these rumours that we're getting of these talks between mediators as well, trying to arrange some kind of ceasefire which may then lead on to peace.
Yeah, this news is coming from the US news site Axios, which is quoting Israeli and US sources. It says that a group of regional mediators are trying to get both Washington and Tehran to agree to a 45-day ceasefire. Now, it's not expected this will be finalised in the next 48 hours, but there is some hope of it ensuing after that. Axios reports a two-phase agreement being floated by Pakistani, Egyptian and Turkish negotiators, and also being mentioned actually directly in text messages between Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Now, the first phase would be a halt to the conflict for 45 days. Then the talks with the actual negotiations would begin. The second phase would ultimately bring an agreement on ending the war. It would only be then that the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened, and a large part of that second phase process would be building trust between the various parties. For the US, that would mean Iran giving assurances on reopening the strait and also on its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. It's actually quite easy to forget at this point that that was the original motive. It might have been a pretext for Israel and the US starting this war, but it was Iran's ability to construct a nuclear weapon. Now, that ability has been called into question. Iran, on the other hand, want a durable ceasefire, not as they would see it, as like the one prevailing in Gaza, where Israel has continued to strike as it sees fit. This is all theoretical for now, but we could possibly see some movement in the coming days.
Oliver, thanks so much. Oliver Farry from our International Affairs Desk there.